Tom boasted about changing the ownership of the house to his name, even though my father had just passed away. I felt dizzy listening to him. Changing ownership isn't that simple. I thought maybe Tom was misunderstanding something. Now the house is mine. LOL. If you have a problem with that, let's get a divorce. LOL. Fine, let's divorce then. But won't you regret it? To my surprise, Tom responded in a dumbfounded voice. Huh? I won't regret it. LOL. With a face as if he wanted to say, "Are you kidding me?" Tom replied. So, he won't regret it. Then I won't hold back. And I don't want to hear any complaints later. I smirked at Tom's naive thinking. My name is Emily. I'm 35 years old and a city office worker. With my serious personality, I feel it's the perfect job for me. My parents were overjoyed when I passed the civil service exam. That's because my father always told me to choose a stable career. It's uncertain whether being a city office worker will always be stable. But for now, I think I can continue this job without any problems. There's a reason why my father emphasized stability. After graduating from university, my father joined a startup. The company only lasted a few years, and he struggled to find another job. He then started his own restaurant and steadily expanded the business. Since most of the locations were renovated vacant or owned properties, the rent was only a small amount. Over 35 years, he accumulated significant wealth, but he also faced many challenges. So, he probably didn't want me to go through the same hardships. I'm content with my stable city office worker job. I might not be rich, but I live comfortably. I just hope for peaceful days ahead. I'll be home late tomorrow. Don't need dinner. How many times has Tom told me this? While washing the dishes, I dried my hands and turned to respond. Again? Does the factory really require that much overtime? It's a busy period right now. Tom works in a semiconductor factory and has been there for 18 years. His daily routine involves processing parts on a production line for 8 hours, which sounds really tough to me. But according to Tom, it's easier than a job that requires a lot of thinking. Right, there's been a shortage of semiconductors recently. Must be tough. Yeah. So, I might be coming home late for a while. I understand. Take care. He has been coming home late recently, and sometimes he doesn't return until the date changes. I can't imagine he's working until that hour, so he's probably out drinking after work. I can understand wanting to relieve a tired body with alcohol, but it seemed like he was doing it too often. However, I can't bring myself to tell Tom about it. If I told him not to drink when he's already exhausted from his demanding job, he might get angry. Fortunately, Tom should be paying for the drinks from his allowance, so it wasn't too big of a problem. I watched as Tom headed to the bedroom and then stretched my shoulders. I've been having shoulder stiffness recently. Living out of sync with Tom has been mentally draining. Maybe that's why I've been so tense. I try to remind myself not to overthink things. I met Tom during my second year of high school. He went to a nearby boys' school and approached me during the homecoming. At first, I was reluctant when this younger guy asked for my contact, but I gave in due to his persistence. When I asked him why he was so interested in me, just a regular girl, he said he liked my vibe. I always thought Tom had a flirty demeanor, so I was initially quite wary. However, I soon realized he was surprisingly devoted, and my feelings for him grew stronger. Even after high school graduation, and as I went to college and became a city office worker, Tom remained my partner. We got married when I was 27. Unfortunately, we haven't been blessed with children since then. I think our chances now might be slim. But I believe a life with just the two of us is okay. If I can continue my life with him unchanged, that's all I want. I think Tom feels the same way. Amidst our busy yet peaceful marital life, my phone rang. Hello? Hello, Emily? Oh, thank goodness. Are you at work right now? Yes, I am. What's up? It's rare for my mother to call during working hours on a weekday, so it must be something urgent. I asked her what had happened. It's terrible. Your father collapsed, and after the tests, they said it's colorectal cancer. Cancer? You're kidding. The word cancer from my mother's mouth made me doubt my ears. No one in our family had ever had cancer. But, considering that my father, a businessman, had neglected his health checkups, it was plausible. It's true. It's quite advanced. But isn't cancer treatable these days? In your father's case, they say he might only have a few months left. A few months? That can't be. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. But my father was only 60, and the rapid progression of the cancer made sense, especially since its detection was late. No matter how much medical technology advances, curing late-stage cancer is challenging, my mother tearfully explained. I understand. I'll come home for a while. I'll also let Tom know. Thank you, Emily. My father means the world to me. Not rushing to his side during his crisis wasn't an option. Tom would surely understand. That day, I finished my work with a distracted mind and went home. Unusually, Tom was home early, and seeing my pale face, he spoke to me. What's wrong? You look upset. Tom was drinking beer on the sofa. I relayed to Tom exactly what my mother had told me, and also mentioned that I'd planned to go to my parents' house for a while. That sounds tough. I understand. Please be with your father during this time. Thank you. But I won't be able to cook. That's okay. I've been coming home late from work anyway. I'll manage eating out. Just remember to eat nutritious food once in a while. I know. Surprisingly, Tom listened calmly. Feeling relieved, I started packing my things, preparing to head to my parents' home the next day. When it was time to sleep, as I was about to enter the room, I heard Tom talking from his bedroom. He must have been on a phone call. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but I stopped in my tracks when I caught a certain word. It seems he's going to kick the bucket. About the thing we discussed earlier, can something be done? Kick the bucket? Was he talking about my father? Yes. I see. Got it. Please help out. I didn't know whom he was talking to or what favor he was asking, but it was clear he was discussing my father. And yet, why use such a word? I've never heard Tom say anything bad about my father before. It's not like they were best buddies. But I didn't think Tom was cold-hearted enough to not be concerned about my ailing father. Yet, was he suggesting that he didn't care about my father? Even though he's terminally ill, my father is still alive. To discuss such matters with a stranger, something's amiss. For the first time, I felt a sense of mistrust towards Tom. From then on, I couldn't shake off my suspicions about him. Even though Tom kindly saw me off with a cheerful take care, I was constantly bothered by what I'd overheard him saying on the phone. I felt Tom was plotting something. That was all about my father's finances. I had not told Tom how much wealth my father possessed. I thought discussing money might be a potential cause for trouble. The inheritance would be discussed when the time came. Now wasn't the moment. I didn't hide it, but I didn't see a reason to bring it up either. But what if Tom knew about my father's assets? What if he was after that money? No, I need to stop overthinking this. Pushing away the negative thoughts, I took care of my father, enjoying our chats. Thank you, Emily. And Laura. I'm a lucky man. Why so formal? Don't say such things. Exactly. It's too early for gratitude. As my mother and I tried to lighten the mood with laughter, only my father sat there with a contented smile, as if he had accepted his fate. That final chapter with my father ended 3 months later. My mother and I weren't prepared for this sudden goodbye. During the funeral, I felt numb, unable to accept the fact that he was gone. Tom, on the other hand, seemed as lively as a fish in water, which made me suspicious. It took about a week after the funeral for my emotions to stabilize. One day, as I was drinking alone in the living room, Tom approached. "Ah, finally, all the bothersome stuff is over." Leaning back with crossed arms and a cold look, he said this. "Bothersome? Yeah. I was hoping your father would pass away sooner. But when he did, the funeral and all were quite a hassle." "What kind of language is that?" "A person died, my father." "How dare you say such a thing?" I couldn't believe what Tom was saying and confronted him. Just as I suspected, Tom had been wishing for my father's early departure. I remembered the phone call I had overheard before. What was Tom's real intention? "So, when do we get the inheritance?" "I've heard you're super rich. You must have a hefty inheritance." It was then that I understood Tom's real intentions. I had never imagined Tom was after my father's assets, especially since I had never discussed my family's finances with him. Nevertheless, it seemed that Tom had realized that his father had quite a fortune. "You look like you're wondering how I know." "I get it. We've always been super poor, struggling just to have 3 meals a day. Compared to that, your family seems well off, and your parents often go on trips, right?" Just from that, I knew you guys were rich. That's why I consulted beforehand. "Consulted? With whom?" After Tom gleefully speculated about my family's financial situation. He indeed mentioned consulting someone. I recalled the day I heard Tom on the phone in his bedroom, wondering if that was the consultation he was referring to. "I have a lawyer acquaintance." I asked him about Grandpa's inheritance. "I'm going to get that inheritance for sure, haha." "Really now?" I was shocked that he discussed my father's inheritance with a stranger without my consent, especially when my father was still alive. I began to question if the man in front of me was truly my husband. I should be getting a response soon. "Look forward to it, haha." Saying only that, Tom returned to the bedroom. He probably intended to contact the lawyer again. I was taken aback by Tom's outrageous behavior. Who on earth would investigate his wife's family inheritance without permission? Inheritance is a matter of my family, not something for Tom to interfere with. Growing suspicious of Tom's actions, I found it hard to speak with him. For some time, we lived in a cold war, but the situation took a drastic turn a month later. Setting aside Tom's talk about inheritance, my father's assets were rightfully passed on to my mother and me. I inherited a fancy house worth $2 million from my father, and it felt overwhelming. I had no immediate plans to move into the inherited house, but it felt too precious to leave untouched. I pondered whether to turn it into a vacation home or sell it, when Tom spoke to me after a long silence. "Hey Emily, how have you been?" Haha. The irony of asking how have you been when living in the same house was not lost on me. I ignored his words and picked up a nearby book. "Don't ignore me. I changed the name on the house you inherited to mine, haha." Upon hearing those shocking words, I looked up from the book I was about to read. "What do you mean?" I asked the lawyer I talked about to handle the procedure. "The procedure to change the ownership?" "Exactly." I couldn't believe it. Not only that he did such a thing behind my back, but also the lawyer who accepted such a request. "The house is now mine. If you have a problem with it, we can divorce, haha." Even though my father had just passed away, Tom was gleefully boasting about changing the name on the house. I felt dizzy. It shouldn't be so easy to change the ownership of a property. I thought maybe Tom was misunderstanding something. I contemplated whether to confront him now or plan a proper revenge later. His actions infuriated me. and it wasn't something I could easily forgive. I wanted to devise a proper plan and get back at him. Fine, let's divorce. Won't you regret it? Thinking I wouldn't agree to a divorce so easily, Tom responded with a surprised what? No, I won't regret it, haha. Tom replied with a face that seemed to say, are you stupid? So, he wouldn't regret it. Fine, then. If he comes crying later, it's not my problem. I smirked internally at Tom's naive thinking. After that, I used every means at my disposal to investigate Tom's background. First, I took paid leave and thoroughly searched Tom's room while he was at work. Tom's messy room was very dirty, with various items scattered on the floor. Among them, I found something and discreetly picked it up. I then fiddled with the computer on Tom's desk and opened the communication app. So this person is a lawyer. The exchange with a man named Robert White was truly terrible. Most of it was about money. And it was about how to steal money from us. I sighed in disbelief. I started to feel sorry for Tom, who was under the control of such a person. After that, I left the room and headed to a certain place. Repeating the painstaking work, I went to confirm Tom's unscrupulousness. The more I investigated, the more I was horrified to realize that I had been living with such a person. After completing the investigation into Tom's background and feeling completely disillusioned, I went to submit the divorce papers. It was easy to report once the necessary items were filled in, as Tom had brought up the topic of divorce. Once the divorce papers were accepted at the city hall, I officially divorced Tom. It was an unexpected divorce for me, but I no longer had any love for Tom who insulted my father. The old Tom is no more. As I found out, Tom was a terrible man. After submitting the divorce papers, our house was no longer mine. This house was originally bought under Tom's name and was mortgaged. I thought I should be the one to leave, but Tom never came back home after that day. He's probably living in the fancy house I inherited. I wonder if he's enjoying his life now. But I wonder how long that will last. I was thinking very calmly about what might happen to Tom. And 3 days later, Tom finally appeared in front of me. Emily, you've already filed for divorce, haven't you? He asked in an anxious voice as soon as he entered the house. To Tom, who suddenly returned and asked such an abrupt question, I responded with, what? So, we're already divorced. Tom's voice grew louder. He seemed very desperate. Yes. I submitted it 3 days ago. So now, we're strangers. What did you say? Despair spreads across Tom's face. Even though Tom was the one who asked for a divorce, I wish he wouldn't look at me like it's my fault. Why did you do something so selfish? Selfish? Weren't you the one who said we should get a divorce? What's with you now? Stunned by my valid point, Tom falls silent for a moment. I had an idea of why Tom suddenly blamed me for the divorce. Emily, please, marry me again. If not, I'm done. Tom now collapses to the floor, his head hanging in defeat. I look at him with pity and ask, oh, what happened? Something wrong? I pretty much knew what had happened, but I purposely asked him anyway. Earlier, some debt collectors came to me. I called White, but he seems to have changed his phone number. I can't get through to him at all. I also sent him an email, but he hasn't read it. That guy deceived me. White was the so-called lawyer. Tom's story was sporadic, but I had a general idea. I found betting tickets and casino receipts in Tom's room and inferred what he had been up to. Oh, so you've been addicted to gambling, huh? I found lots of betting tickets and casino receipts in your room. I even checked your entry history at a local gambling hall and found out you've been going there for almost a year. Is that why you ran out of money? I checked our joint account and found several unexplained withdrawals. You even took money from our savings. And then you were deceived by that lawyer? Yes, Tom had been indulging in gambling behind my back. When it was discussed that I would inherit my father's assets, he probably saw it as an opportunity. He had been consulting with a man named White, who claimed to be a lawyer, about how he could inherit the assets. Yes, that's right. I know gambling was wrong, but I was deceived by that guy too. It seems the fancy house you inherited isn't under my name. I'm going to go bankrupt. Isn't it pitiful? Please help me. I was past anger and simply astounded at the pathetic sight of my ex-husband. Had he forgotten his hopes for my father's death and his sacrilege? I couldn't even think of him as an ex-husband anymore. What are you talking about? Aren't you the one to blame? Feel sorry for you? Should I even? Mostly, being deceived is because you're so clueless. The assets I inherited from my father are called specific property, and they're not subject to property division. It's impossible to just change the name. Despite that, you were easily deceived by that white guy. How convenient for you. I will never forgive you in my life. Tom, seeing my firm and fierce expression, shrank back in fear. I walked past the pathetic Tom and opened the front door. Well, I'm moving to the house I got from my father. Please continue living in this house. You have a loan to repay, so do your best. Wait. I confidently walked away, leaving behind a desperate man calling out to me. A week later, I received a phone call on my smartphone. Surprisingly, the call was from Tom's mother. I hesitated, thinking she might blame me for the divorce, but it was the opposite. Ah, Emily. I'm so sorry. It seems our son has done something terrible. I don't even know how to apologize. No, you don't need to apologize for anything. No, I can't rest easy knowing what he's done. He even asked for help with repaying his debt. I'm just as shocked. I gave him a stern talking to. Told him to brace himself because I'm going to make him work hard at home. He won't have the chance to gamble again. He needs to learn the value of money. He'll handle both his job and chores by himself for a while. Tom's mother seemed furious about her son's indiscretions, and was intent on making him go through tough times ahead. I couldn't help but smirk, wondering if Tom could endure his mother's strict guidance. This was punishment for disrespecting my father and trying to deceive me out of my inheritance. I didn't feel the slightest bit sorry for him. He should focus on repaying his debt. As I had declared, I moved into the luxurious house I inherited from my father. It was furnished, so I didn't need to buy anything. I did need to buy some minor items like clothing, which I had left at the old house. But thinking about my new, free life made me excited. The new house was spacious, almost $2,000 for just one person. I was pretty much done with marriage for now. But if time passed and I found someone nice, I would invite him over to this house. I bet he'd be so surprised he'd be floored. The mere thought of a future husband's reaction made me chuckle. Thank you, Dad. Grateful to my father for leaving me such a wonderful asset, I took a new step forward.